It's time once again for Tarver Talks. Insights and perspective from Ed Tarver, Georgia Democratic candidate for United States Senate. Now, here's our program host for today, 8-time Emmy Award-winning journalist Maynard Eaton.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first edition of Tarver Talks. It's a weekly conversation with the candidate about political issues in his Senate campaign. Now meet and see Mr. Ed Tarver. Ed, welcome to your show. Listen, sir, let's start right away. After such a successful public service career and legal career, why seek this Senate seat for Georgia?
Well, it's just a belief that I have that this is probably the most significant election of my lifetime. I believe that we're in a fight for our democracy, and I just didn't see myself as staying on the sideline when you consider the amount of experience, the commitment that I've made to public service, and the amount of issues that I have faced personally that I think would be helpful in resolving some of the issues that Georgians face.
I've asked many people about you, especially during your time in the Georgia Senate. They say you're not the so-called typical politician. Will that help you in this campaign, being something other than what people see as a politician?
Well, I hope so. Running for the U.S. Senate was not a lifelong ambition. To be honest, Maynard, when I went to law school and graduated from law school, that was achieving my ambition. I wanted to be a practicing attorney. And when I achieved that, I was very pleased. I've just been fortunate. After leaving law school, I was selected to be a law clerk for the United States District Court. I worked for the chief judge for a year, which was a highly sought after position, and I was pleased to get that. And after leaving the chambers of the chief judge, I was even more fortunate to be hired by the oldest and the largest firm in Augusta. I became the first African-American lawyer in the firm and subsequently the first Black American partner in that firm. And so I was living my dream. I was practicing law, representing clients, doing good for the people, and also had time to work in the community. Public service came as an afterthought when people contacted me because there was a need. There was a need in the state legislature, and folks thought that I would be a good solution to with some of the issues that were going on during that time. And so I agreed to run, and the people agreed. They elected me on 3 separate times to the Georgia State Senate.
But then, perhaps the highlight of your career, President Obama invites you to do something meaningful and significant. Does he not? He
does. When during my third term in the Georgia Senate, I got a call about the possibility that President Obama would nominate me to be the United States Attorney for the Southern District of Georgia. It was a significant nomination because there had never been a Black American nominated who has served as the Chief Federal Law Enforcement Officer for South Georgia. South Georgia was the 43 counties in Southern Georgia. And so it was interesting, but it also came at a time when I was comfortable serving as the state senator representing District 22. I felt that I had just gotten to a point where I knew how to make things happen for my constituents. And so I was a little reluctant to leave that position, to stop the services that I was providing for those people in my community and to go to the executive branch of government, which is what that appointment would have required. I'm glad that I did, but it was certainly a difficult decision to make.
Was it a difficult job, sir? Even though you're an esteemed attorney, was it difficult to reconcile law versus your community? What was it like?
It was difficult to accept some of the things that were happening, some of the ways that government authority was being used. When I started as U.S. Attorney for the Southern District, one of the first things I noticed is that about 80% of the matters that we handled in the office were criminal prosecutions. And then when you look at the makeup of those criminal prosecutions, an overwhelming number of those prosecutions were prosecutions of Black Americans. And then as we got into the Obama administration, we looked at just what the impact of how we were enforcing federal law and the impact that it was having on the communities. And we learned that, there in this country, there are approximately 2.3 million Americans who are incarcerated in federal and state prisons across the country. And of that 2.3 million people, 75 to 78% of them were black or brown. And it seems like a lot of folks were who looked like me, who were black or brown, were being sent to prison for long periods of time based upon the way that we were exercising our authority on behalf of the federal government, and based upon the discretion that was being used in determining which cases to prosecute, which cases not to prosecute, and certainly which cases required lengthy prison sentences. So it was a concern, but fortunately, President Obama, Attorney General Eric Holder, U.S. Attorney General Loretta Lynch, they were open to alternatives to the way that we were conducting our business on behalf of the Department of Justice. We were able to start reentry programs that would help those who had completed their obligation under the judicial system to help them return to the community. We were able to go out into the community and educate the business community and also the community as a whole on what was happening.
Sir, so would it be fair to say you made a difference? You made things change?
I believe I did. I was very pleased at the fact that I actually went into the prisons, was able to speak with individuals who were incarcerated in our federal and state prisons to find out what their concerns were, what they needed in order to be successful once they had completed their obligation, had paid their debts to society. What I learned was that in many cases, a large, overwhelming majority of those who are incarcerated, they had children. Many of them had children. Many of them were husbands or wives. Many of them had the same obligations that most of us have in terms of their obligations to provide for their families. They needed a safe, clean, affordable housing. They needed health care. They needed to be able to earn a living to provide for their families. And we also learned that there was a perception that if you had a criminal record, then you shouldn't be given a decent job. And we learned very quickly that those who were not able to find decent jobs that would allow them to meet the needs of themselves and their families quickly had no alternative but to return to the same type of behavior that led to their incarceration in the first place. And so it was very rewarding to go out and to interact with the business community, to talk to business leaders, to talk to citizens, and to explain to them about the importance of at least giving folks who had criminal records a fair chance to reenter society and to return to the workforce.
Mr. Tarver, that had to be a sobering and unsettling experience, but one that armed you with information for your Senate bid. Is that correct?
Well, it certainly gave me exposure to some of the issues that were facing the community. Certainly, as we're in a period right now where we hear a lot about Ahmaud Arbery and what happened to him in Brunswick, Georgia. We hear a lot of discussion about George Floyd and what happened to him in Minnesota. We just this week hearing a lot about Jacob Blake and what happened in his situation in Wisconsin. And having been the United States Attorney and been responsible for those types of cases, handling those types of cases where law enforcement is accused of either using excessive force or engaging in some type of misconduct, I recognize right away the challenges that we face when situations like this happen. One of the things that I would advocate almost immediately for once should I be elected to the U.S. Senate is some type of national process whereby local authorities are not required to investigate one of their own. One of the issues that we faced several times during my time as United States Attorney was officers who were accused or who had charges of excessive force brought against them, and then they would those charges would be sent to my office for investigation and possible prosecution, even though that officer may be someone that we had worked with, many times before on other cases. And it's just hard to ask somebody who, before they were being charged, it was considered as a family member. You're now asking to investigate them with a critical eye to determine whether or not you're going to indict them and possibly send them to prison. We should have a system nationwide whereby independent individuals are brought in to investigate these allegations. All that will do is ensure that a proper result occurs. And in addition to obtaining a proper result, it will give the citizens more confidence in the system that they rely on for their protection and their safety.
Sir, what's your sense of where we are today? As you well know, there's an ongoing political and racial reckoning occurring in America. What are your thoughts about what's going on?
Well, I think it's long overdue. I think that we've had a number of studies that show that there's implicit racial bias in our criminal justice system. It's time that we take steps to address it and to eliminate that from the criminal justice system. I think that one of the things that's encouraging about what we're seeing as a result of some recent events is that this is not a movement just by Black people or just by white people, but a great diverse group of individuals are coming together to let their voices be heard and to demand that there be immediate change to what's happening in this country. We see it most recently and over the last couple of days in what has happened with our professional athletes in the NBA, in the WNBA, on the tennis courts, on the baseball fields. They're insisting that our legislators, that our country address this problem. And I think it's long overdue.
Sir, as you well know, we see and hear the mantra, Black Lives Matter. What does that say to you? What does that mean to a person seeking to be the next senator from Georgia?
Well, it says to me that there's a large segment of our population who doesn't feel like the system is protecting them. And it goes back to, to me and my relationship with my father. And I remember the conversations that he would have with me that were designed to make sure that I returned home safely when I would go out to either have fun with my friends or go out to school or go out to work. And then I think forward to the conversations that I have with my two children. I have a son and a daughter. I have actually 4 children, but I have 2 children that are older, and then I have 2 younger children. But the same conversations that we have with them out of concern for their safety, concern about how people may react to them, how people may misinterpret something that they do or say or take action against them based solely upon the color of their skin. And the concern that we have is that it's time that law enforcement, that public officials, that ordinary Georgians stop making decisions, stop taking actions against individuals, certainly solely because of the color of their skin. It's long overdue for that type of behavior to stop.
You mentioned conversations that haven't changed much since we talked to our sons, and what's happening now, is it?
Has not changed much at all. And it's just frightening to be in a situation where now I'm a parent of children, and the same conversations that my dad and mom had with me, I'm having with my children, just about simple things that you wouldn't think that you'd have to make sure that they're aware of their surroundings all the time, that they behave or respond a certain way if they're stopped by law enforcement, that they have to keep their hands in clear sight, that they have to be aware that if they move suddenly or they move in a way that startles the officer, that they could be fired upon. Those are things that are sobering thoughts, and it's certainly very difficult for parents to have to address with their children.
Today, we're witnessing the 57th anniversary of the March on Washington. It's underway as we speak. Do you sense we're witnessing a new civil rights era, Mr. Tarver?
I don't think I do not think I think we're watching or witnessing a continuation of the original, the existing civil rights era. will remind you that the March on Washington, the title of it was the March on Washington for Jobs and for Freedom. And it seems like we're still fighting the same battle for freedom in this country. The same things that Dr. King and his supporters were marching for 57 years ago. People are marching for today in the streets of our cities all across the country. And it's disappointing that it has gone this long and we still haven't received or achieved what we sought. But it's encouraging to know that there are new, younger, more vibrant, more energetic voices that are being added to the call, and that we may be on the verge of bringing about the results that Dr. King and his followers during the 60s were not able to bring about.
So what issues will you emphasize, strategize about, and tell your constituency about what issues you think are in the forefront of this campaign or your campaign?
Well, right now, you can't overlook the COVID-19 global pandemic. And unfortunately, unfortunately, the pandemic raises issues that we've been dealing with for years and years in this country. Access to healthcare, the quality of education, and how to provide quality education that each and every one of our citizens are entitled to receive. The economy, how people are going to continue to be employed and to earn a living to provide for themselves and their families. All of those issues are longstanding issues that we've discussed in one campaign after another, but they've been brought home and been enhanced as a result of the COVID-19 crisis. And so I'm concerned about what's happening with education, whether or not we can return our children to in-person education without turning them into guinea pigs. We certainly know that education is important to our children, but we need to do that in a manner that provides them with the utmost safety. We need to make sure that before we send kids back to the classroom, that we have the resources in every school in this country that provides at least for school nursing, for contract tracing, and for a mechanism by which we can isolate those who are suspected of being contaminated or infected with the COVID-19 virus. And those kinds of questions have not been answered. What we see is a complete abdication of responsibility from the highest levels of our government. You know, the White House is not taking responsibility for consistent nationwide policy that people can look to and follow in determining how best to move forward. And I think it's time that that Congress, that those in the U.S. Senate take steps to provide Americans with the guidance that they seek, that they desire, in order to resume their lives.
Finally, there's a crowded field of candidates in the Senate race, as you well know. What will it take for you to win? Why should I vote for you?
I think you should vote. I would ask you to do one thing before you vote, and that is look at my record, my demonstrated record of public service, the experience that I've gained in all three the levels of government. I've served in the executive branch most recently as a United States attorney, where not only was I responsible for the representation of the United States of America in Southern Georgia, but I was also a part of the process by which statutes and legislation that affect not only Georgians but all Americans were. I was a part of that. I think that I would certainly ask you to look at my record of service while serving in the Georgia legislature as a member of the Georgia State Senate, and the legislation that not only I embraced and supported, but the legislation that I helped to write and to propose on behalf of the citizens of Georgia. I think that has given me a considerable amount of experience. You know, as I mentioned that, I think about back in 2006, during my first term in the legislature, where I was one of 13 state senators who opposed Georgia's version of the Stand Your Ground legislation, because the legislation was being amended to allow individuals to use deadly force and that means force that's sufficient to kill someone, and it would authorize ordinary citizens to use deadly force to protect private property, to protect other folks and other property that was on public lands, and it just seems like an unnecessary expansion of the right of someone to go out and take someone else's life. And when I think about what happened in 2006, and I relate it to today, come forward to today, and see what happened with Ahmaud Arbery in Brunswick. That what happened with him was the same thing that I was concerned about in 2006 when I voted against that legislation. You had two so-called vigilantes who were concerned about Mr. Arbery's presence on somebody else's property. It wasn't their personal property. And even though Ahmaud Arbery left the property and attempted to continue his jog down the street, they followed him. They pulled out a weapon. They engaged him and subsequently killed him. And that extension of the Stand Your Ground legislation, which we considered in 2006, is directly relevant to what happened in 2020 with Ahmaud Arbery. And it's just, I think that I would ask folks to just recognize that today, with the circumstances that we face as a country and as a state, that we need bold, new leadership, someone who's going to go and who will speak the truth, who will be transparent, and who's going to fight for the rights and the best interests of all Georgians. And if you look at my record, if you look at my record of service, and you compare that record of service to the other candidates that are running, I think that Georgians will see that I'm the most qualified to represent Georgia right now today in the Senate. And I'm ready to go to Washington and to provide leadership starting on day one.
My man, that sounded pretty good, sir. Thank you so much. You've been watching Tarver Talks with the Senate candidate, Mr. Ed Tarver. Thank you. See you next week.